Here at the Dreaming Machine podcast, we've discovered the secrets of time travel.
And after rigorous discussion of the most ethical ways to make use of this power, clearly the only logical option was letting one of us pitch a show to the other and then jumping ahead in time and finding out what they thought of it.
In each episode, one of us will pitch a cartoon to someone who's never seen it before. We'll then jump forward in time after the person's seen the cartoon for themselves to immediately find out their reaction. Welcome to The Time Traveler's Pitch. So Made in Abyss is possibly the best anime series I've seen in recent years, and one of my favourite anime series ever. So that's the start of my pitch, really, Amy.
That would be, it would have some stiff competition for me, but I think part of that is because I only recently finally got around to seeing Madoka Magica.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got some stiff competition there, but I'm willing to hear you out.
So, yeah, of course, everyone's got their own tastes and personal favourites for sure. And, you know, I'm not sticking my flag to the mast to say it's my favourite ever anime series, but it's definitely up there, and it's become a very well-regarded show, I think, it's fair to say, in like wider circles.
Okay.
Before this was recorded, I was reading Crunchyroll had it as one of its best anime series. There's a live-action adaptation like being worked on apparently. The sequel, there's been sequel movies and the sequel series came out after a bit of a delay.
Well,
So
we can almost certainly say the live-action adaptation won't be as good.
oh, for sure, yeah.
Maybe if they had like Guillermo del Toro helming it or something.
But yeah, it's had and the manga has done really well. So it's based on the manga series that's got it's got like millions of copies in circulation. That's quite a big thing too. I have to confess, I've only seen little bits of the manga. I've not really read it, so my impression here is very much based on the anime series. And yeah, it's interesting because I normally rewatch things in the build up. Like obviously, like I rewatch things to remind myself about shows that we're going to talk about, and because I'll pick them with different themes and things I like to talk about. What was really interesting was when I rewatched it, it was amazing how much I already remembered. Like and was like kind of seared into my brain because of how well directed and paced the show is.
It's a good sign when it's all really clear in your memory still.
Yeah.
It's a good sign that it shows all killer, no filler.
Is exactly. So it was just very interesting that there's so many. As I'll talk about later, it's like one of the best directed things I've ever seen. The shots and the images like really do stay with you, like in the show. So of course it's easy for me to say this. So I still need to pick up the pitch. Like it's easy for me to say I like it. Everyone's got their own personal taste. So
Yeah.
why do I think you would like?
Why would I like it?
So let me give you a very quick synopsis, but you know, no important spoilers here. This is just a setup.
Okay.
So it's in the title. There's an abyss, right? So it's basically a big
Got
hole.
it. I
in the
figured
ground.
there was an abyss.
Right. There's a big hole in the ground. I think in the show they talk about it being like the only abyss left, or the only abyss in the world they're in. And people started to explore this abyss, like go into the hole to find its secrets. So there's like they talk about relics there that you can collect, like treasures, and they provide materials you can use in the world they exist in. And there's like monsters and like so a lot of adventurers started to go to this abyss in order to explore it and bring stuff back. And
this is starting to sound like the setup to some kind of horror manga, but go on.
Well, it's interesting. It does have. I don't want this to put anyone off who's not into horror, because you can still really enjoy the show, but it does have elements of horror within the show. It's a very interesting genre mashup kind of thing.
Oh, that's good.
So it's not a major thing, but it does have elements of that, arguably, especially as you go to the later episodes of season 1. But yeah, so as a result, this city's been built at the top of the abyss. And
naturally, you just build a city at the top of the abyss. I mean,
yeah.
this is like so many video games where you have the the quaint farming town, and then there's a dungeon underneath it.
I mean, let's be clear. Health and safety isn't the strong suit of the show, right? It's the fact like the main
The
characters are
whole
kids.
descending into children descending into an abyss. This sounds fine.
The way they deal with the children, the way the houses are just on the edge of this massive cliff, and they look like very narrow, rickety bridges that go around it and stuff. So if you go with the visuals are stunning, like both the animation style and like the artistry and how they've developed the city and the shots of showing it in it's absolutely spectacular.
Oh, this is starting to sound like some dreams I've had that I've drawn pictures of in the past.
That I mean, yeah, it really does have a dreamlike nature to it as well.
Have you ever had dreams where you're like in a massive cityscape, but it's just everything is around like the cliff tops inside this big pit?
Oh man, I really have had that kind of dream. Yeah. Like when
Yeah.
you like really on the edge, and it's kind of spectacular but scary at the same time.
So yeah, no, I kind of just want to see this now.
Yeah, like it's visually spectacular, and the series. But what's interesting is they set up so there's a city there, and we follow. There's an orphanage where the main characters are based. So you have Rico, who is an orphan girl who has grown up there, and they have some family history, so they're even more connected to and interested in the Abyss because of the family history, which I let people experience for themselves. And very confident and excited about going to the Abyss. Don't think enough about the consequences really of doing that. Like they're not as maybe cautious as they should be, but very like plucky, likable heroine like of our tale. I think
Okay.
she's like 12 in it. She's quite young, I think, from memory. And
Old enough to delve into an abyss.
yeah, so you have to go with them on the health and safety, which is like it's a crazy setup, but you just go with it. They give them a whistle. That's super helpful in the
I
situation
mean,
going into.
historically speaking, there were probably quite a large amount of 12-year-olds sent down into a black abyss around where I live. So
Yeah,
it doesn't stretch belief that much.
it does. It does kind of make you think of mining, really, in terms of people mining for well, they call them relics, but it is basically mining for materials, like for fancy materials. But that's what they're doing. It's got that. So even though it does have that hard work and tough conditions situation to it, it's still you can see the sense of adventure and excitement people have as well. So it kind of does. There's quite an interesting dynamic there. And what's really good is they set up the rules of the Abyss. So one of the key things, which is established early on and isn't a big spoiler, it's about it's kind of like out in the heightened version of altitude sickness, let's say. So you can go down into the Abyss and that has an impact. But what definitely has an impact is when you come back up. So the deeper you go, the harder it is to come back up, basically, in terms of your health and well-being when you
Oh,
come out of it.
interesting.
Yeah,
You acclimatized to the abyss.
and it's well, that's really interesting how different people react to it and what happens to different levels and how the show extrapolates from that very well, thinking about the repercussions of that. But yes, that's a really key. So what's great is you have this incredible fantasy setting, this magical setting, but it has like quite solid rules to it, and
I
explains
like
it in a very
solid
deft
rules to a
way.
setting.
Yeah.
I like when a setting is consistent in that world building.
So that's kind of the setup, and she runs into a boy. I want to say Reg, but I think you pronounce it Reg. Like that seems to be what they do in the dub, and he is different from other boys, and
Oh, he's not like other boys, TM.
yeah, and they show that in a very exciting way in the first episode, which like had me hooked when I watched it. It's a great action scene, and they and it shows the prettiness of the upper levels of the Abyss,
Hmm.
and the environment they're in. But yeah, you find out he's not like other boys, and which is useful in the context of the Abyss and wanting to go explore and do an adventure in the Abyss, basically. And because of the family history, there's an extra level to that for Rico and why she's motivated to go down into the Abyss. So that's the setup. And that's kind of all covered in the first episode or two. So I've tried to. I think a lot of the fun is exploring the plot and enjoying it. So I've avoided any spoilers there. But hopefully that gives you an idea that it's a very intriguing setup.
Well, I think you've given me enough of an interest in maybe taking a peek into that abyss. And yeah, we'll see what I find down there.
Indeed. So I won't talk any more about the story of the setup. I just wanted to highlight a few things because I'm really interested in your view on this, Amy.
Mhm.
When I jump ahead in time and see your reaction. So I think what's brilliant, what I really enjoyed was the anime. So the characters are very likable but distinct enough, and they have really good backstories and things like that and payoffs. But what really stood out for me was the animation stunning, and the music is like it's very pretty and atmospheric, but it has that like unsettling vibe to it too. Like the music works really well in the show.
I
and
really
I think
appreciate good animation and sound work.
yeah, and I think like as I mentioned, the direction and some of the sequences are like amazing. There's I won't spoil it because you've got to experience it, but basically there's a couple of times in the show where instead of going to the normal end credits, they show a bit more of the story over the end credits.
Okay, yeah, I like when a show sometimes does that.
And without telling you what happens in them, I think like the later sequence in the first season is kind of famous now. Like it's beautiful and very clever, and it's an absolutely brilliantly directed sequence. Like you'll know what I mean when you see it. So there's a brilliant visually, and the pacing, the story is all fantastic. There are some things to watch out for. Like from a more well, I don't think they're big negatives, but I do want to talk about them because I'd be interested in your view on this too. I've seen some people criticize it for being a bit too slow at the start.
A lot of shows have that.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think this is.
Some of my favorite shows have that.
Yeah, some shows need that setup. And actually, I disagree with some of that criticism I've read online because I think, like, everything I've just told you, it tells you, like, really fast in the first episode. I think you're very quickly going into the exciting adventure of the Abyss. So I don't think that's a fair criticism at all. I disagree with that.
That can sometimes backfire if you have a lot of that set up in your first episode or two, and then the show settles more into its pace. Sometimes that can feel to people like it's suddenly come to a grinding halt.
So I'd be interested in your view on that. Yeah, like I do see both sides, but that's just my view on it. One criticism I do kind of agree with is there is a little bit of like maybe a little overly cliched anime style humor. There's one particularly awkward joke about the kids being like the kind of punishment when they're strung up. That I think's like inappropriate already with adults, let alone kids. So I agree with that criticism, but it's honestly not a big deal. It's not a major part of the show, and you see as soon as it settles into its groove, like it does this humor like in a cleverer, better way. I think as it settles in, I do like take on board like some of that. The last one,
what I think about it.
Yeah, and I'd be really interested in, without saying what happens, what you think of how the series ends, and what you think that means for the future of the show. I'd be really interested in it because
Okay.
I had not in a bad way. I had mixed feelings on it because it's like okay, I see what they're doing here. I'm not gonna say anymore because I'd be really
Okay,
I'd just
well,
be really
we'll find out when
interested
I get there.
in how you feel about it, where it leaves it. Basically, that's all I'm gonna say.
Well, for you and the viewers, we don't have viewers here. Listeners, you'll find out what I think about it in just a moment.
I don't even have to wait. This is fantastic. Okay, enjoy your next few weeks. I'll see you on the other side.
See you on the other side. It's been weeks, absolute weeks. I didn't think you were actually going to get here. I thought something went wrong with the time travel.
Well, as you know, time travel is a risky business.
Exact science is not an exact science.
Ah, exactly. And I may have missed weeks of my life. I hope nothing
You were gone
that.
so long, I had time to watch the entirety of season 1 and the film and season 2. And Joe,
Yes.
I need to ask, what the fuck did I just watch?
Can I answer that? That is a difficult question to answer. I'll be honest.
It is a complex question. So you've only seen season 1, right?
I have. Kind
The
of.
perils of time travel. You missed
Yeah.
out on a chance to see season 2.
I was so excited about season 2 being available. I watched the start of it, and then I realized I needed to watch the movie first, so I paused it. So I've seen little bits after, but I've mainly just seen
Easy
season 1 so
mistake to
far.
make.
Yeah.
So let me tell you, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen things, and not in the romantic Roy Batty dying on the rooftop speech kind of way. Oh no. I've definitely seen things you wouldn't believe. All these moments I wish could be lost in time, like tears in the rain.
I like the reference. Okay. Firstly, did you like it?
Yes. I I couldn't stop myself watching it. That's that's the main takeaway. It was engaging. It's very engaging.
It's probably, is it fair to say it's one of the most, it must be up there with one of the most intense shows you've seen, right?
Yes. And I appreciate horror, so I definitely I'm buying what this is selling, you know?
Yeah.
But man,
And it's weird because it's kind of like horror but mixed with adventure, mixed with it's kind of like a mismatch of like, it's not like pure straight horror as a show, is it? But it definitely has lots of horror in there.
and there's the juxtaposition of how much of a sort of sweet kind of style it has with just how horrific it is. Like my biggest takeaway was like it's like imagine if Studio Ghibli want to make something and they couldn't get Miyazaki for it, but David Cronenberg was free.
Yeah, basically, that's an excellent summary of the show, I think.
I absolutely love the art style. It's really good.
Mm-hmm.
There are some amazingly well realized places and settings and scenes. It's really really good in that sense. Um, you suddenly start to develop an affection for the characters, um,
Yeah.
which is awful because first and foremost, this is a show about traumatizing children, and it excels at what it does.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, let's be fair. The children in this world, this world that's been created in the show, children are not well treated. That's a
No,
pretty fair statement, right?
no, children are exploited quite horrendously in this world, which
Even before they go into this abyss, like even at the very start of the show, they're like not treated particularly well.
and all of this sort of leads into explaining why so many of the adults are how they are.
Right.
If this is the way their society taught them to understand was normal. Yeah, you can see why the real monsters in the abyss, the worst monsters in the abyss, tend towards being the delvers who've been going down there the longest.
Yeah, for sure.
Which has disturbing implications for one of the protagonists meeting her mother.
Yes. So yeah, I think that's true. Like even quite early on in the show, you see people who are quite like adults who are
your first introduction
like,
to White Whistles.
Yeah.
She's something. The thing is, you encounter her and you're like, oh my god, she is a terrible human being.
Yes.
And everything she's doing to these kids. And then you go deeper in and you realize she's the nicest of them. She's the one who really cares about them.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's absolutely crazy. It's because you're like, oh, firstly, like, can you really, given like what she's been like, that about turn, saying like, oh, she's one of the nice ones, it's hard to swallow anyway, I think. But then it's like, oh my god, how much worse is there as you go further into this pit?
Yeah. So I think we should probably. I really want to gush about some of the specific details, but we should probably give a spoiler warning for people going forward.
Yes, we should.
And also probably a content warning. There are some fairly graphic scenes we are going to be discussing of various like body horror nature and the like.
One in particular that's making me wince right
Just
now.
Thinking about it, yeah. So
yeah.
There is no shame in stopping, turning off the podcast and deciding this is not a show for you.
We like the view. We like the listening count.
The only shame is on us in that we drove off a viewer. That's the only shame in it. There is no shame in you choosing to stop that playback right now.
Indeed. Yeah.
So,
okay.
So Joe,
let's go for it. Yes.
I know you can't wait to get to discussing the arm, but we should probably go a little bit before that. Characters. Can I just ask, what is this show's obsession with buttholes?
Oh my goodness, indeed.
Because right at the start, when Rico finds Reg, when she's giving the summary of her investigations into the little cyborg boy she found, it establishes a precedent that the show will come back to buttholes. She broke the measuring stick inside him.
Yeah.
This was probably the point I realised how fucked up the children in this world are.
The only thing I'd say is that, yes, you're right, and that must have shocked you when watching it. I would say that at this stage, you can maybe put it down to kind of bawdy anime-style humour.
Yeah.
Plus, it was genuinely quite. It's not my kind of humor normally, but it was actually quite funny.
It's like, oh, isn't it cute? She's interested in the science of it, so naturally she does the probing of him. Yeah. But then later on we come back to this when we encounter Nanachi, and
yeah.
So yeah, the one thing this show does well is, I think, making you care about its characters, because it wants you to care about them, because that's how it hurts you. Am I
I'm
wrong?
loving this reaction, Amy. I'm loving this. Yeah, I feel like I've broken you with the show. you were innocent. Well, you were innocent, right? You had no awareness of this before.
I was never innocent.
Yeah, I did like pause as I said that, but but oh my goodness, like I just like I'm so happy with the decision to jump forward in time to listen to this. I feel like I've really broken
But
you.
yeah, we get the establishment of them and of some of their relationships there, and then you think maybe we're going to get a bit longer with the other characters, but then no,
Yes,
it's just straight off on their expedition, pretty much.
which I liked about the
Yeah,
show. I
yeah.
liked the fact it set it up quite efficiently, um, compared to other series I might name that have quite like really where yeah. So I thought that was okay
Yeah.
actually, personally.
And then
Yeah,
whoosh, you've got them going in there, heading down. You don't even meet one of the main characters until the last few episodes, which
yes, indeed.
oh my. So yeah, I want to get to it, and I don't think we can avoid it much longer. But the the arm scene.
Just before you go into the arm, I do have one question. Like because like obviously this is your first reaction, so I was just interested. Like, at what point during the show did you first think like WTF? Like this is like a different kind of show.
So like even their encounter, like you had a bunch of fairly traditional sort of little sort of kids off on an adventure tropes for a while.
Yeah,
Like even even the encounter with their first white whistle. Uh, that is very much sort of a standard sort of you have a mentor character putting them through an ordeal sort of thing. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, they really like you wonder when they get to that confrontation when they're down deep. Like you wonder like, oh, how far are they going to push this? And then
yeah,
she gets stung, you're like,
indeed.
okay. And then you're like, oh no, he's doing the thing. He's like taking her up and it's making all the poison come out of her. That's clever. Like it makes you
Yeah,
bleed when that happens, so all the poison comes out. And then it doesn't work.
yeah,
So yeah, that's not enough. Um, and that's when you start to wonder, like, how far are they going to take this? And like then he starts to try and cut off the arm, and he can't do like a clean cut. He's not even doing it in the right place. Uh,
uh,
as Nanachi points out later, and he's just so bad at it, and he's making such a mess, and everything's getting worse. And then, yeah, and then that's the perfect natural moment to introduce Nanachi to the story.
yeah, my goodness.
And then you have that whole arc, and then it just keeps getting worse because then you get Nanachi's backstory, and
Oh my god, yeah, that's the worst bit of season one for me. He's just saying something. I mean, it's the most traumatic scene, isn't it, when you see that flashback and what happened?
Nanachi and their friend are like, yeah, interesting. Oh, Mitty, she was. Oh no. I like Nanachi's use of gender neutral pronouns.
Yeah, I think the story with Nanachi and their friend was horrendous.
It's
Um,
so awful.
yeah,
Just the. Ah. But that's giving you an idea of just how far, like, some of those white whistles are going to achieve their objectives of exploring the abyss.
yeah,
Because it turns out some of these things are things you have to do to get deeper in the abyss. Um, But you've not seen the film yet.
Yeah, but there's nothing that's going to justify what they did to Mitty. Seriously, it's horrendous.
Oh,
I don't care what Discovery they lost.
oh, if you think that's bad, no. That's not the worst thing they figured out. The worst thing comes when they figured out how to get around that aspect of the curse.
Oh my goodness. I mean, just to take it one step at a time, like the arm breaking scene. Oh my goodness, it was like I think like when the rock's behind Reg's arm, and the rock comes down. You know, the rock comes down just for hit it. It's like
The moment where the shield goes up and you're like,
yeah.
it's, and then you see it's gone straight through.
I literally this was on the rewatch, by the way. I already knew what was going to happen, and I still yelped out loud when watching it.
Yeah.
I couldn't. It's horrendous. And then even before that, like when as you say, you think she's gonna, you think that Rico's gonna be okay, and then the blood's coming up in Rico's eyes. It's just horrendous. So Nanachi is a fantastic character, we should say, and
I can already imagine a live action adaptation of this, and the amount of practical effects that would go into it. Because you could only do it with a lot of practical effects.
I don't want to imagine it, even though there is apparently a live action remake coming up. By the time of recording, that's been rumored. Yeah, so it's pretty. Yeah, the body horror stuff is pretty horrendous, we should say. I mean,
the stuff with what happens to Mitty and all the other kids they were experimenting on, and even to a degree, Nanachi, the only one who survived it, really. Like
Talk me through your reaction, like, as you watch that flashback sequence, basically.
Oh. Well, you know this kind of person I am, so like I could see what was coming, that something really horrific was coming.
Yeah.
But like, all the stuff between the two of them and how much they cared about each other, and they're the last two there. And I'm just like, okay, Bonded has to die. That there is no way they can let Bonded live. Seriously.
Irredeemable. Yeah, seriously.
And yeah, then just drop them, and you've got that moment where they're just at the bottom there in the next layer, and you see all the other remains of the kids oozing towards them.
Oh, it's so horrendous. Yeah.
There is more of this to come.
But you found it addictive though, didn't you?
Remember, season 2, they can only ever go deeper from here on.
Indeed.
Because they can't go up at all ever now.
But despite all this horrendousness, that you still found it addictive and had to keep watching, right?
Yeah, I wanted to see what happens next. Now, I do like some good like body horror stuff, so yeah, like I was absolutely down with watching more of it, but at the same time, you really feel this the whole way through.
Yeah.
And the thing is, as I say, you've only seen season 1 properly, but like, you think after seeing the final few episodes of season 1, like, it's pretty much hit as sort of as deeply as it's gonna get.
Yeah.
And then then you get the film, which takes it even further.
Yeah.
And season 2 opens with
Yeah.
season 2 opens with something pretty extreme,
Yeah.
and that is not the most extreme and graphic thing that is going to happen in that season.
Oh gosh. Because I'm aware of what happens at the very start of season 2. Oh dear. Yeah. I mean, it is pretty intense, the body horror and all the trauma and stress the characters go through. I also found it addictive. It's kind of
Like, here's the thing.
yeah.
This wouldn't be effective if it didn't make you care about the characters.
Yeah. And for me, it really does nail the sense of discovery and adventure.
Yeah. You're always there for seeing what's around the corner, like what's coming up next. You want to see what they see next. When they get to the big field full of the flowers,
Yeah.
it's absolutely breathtaking view.
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? Like, I mean, there's some.
And then what happens next? Oh man, that's the thing. It gives you these incredibly beautiful things,
Yeah.
and then it just twists them and makes them utterly horrific. Again, with like the Goblets of the Giants when they get there, and it's just utterly amazingly well done scenery and backgrounds, and like the setting is amazing. And then you are reminded instantly of just how dangerous that place is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and as you say, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Like the first few layers down, when you have creatures attacking them. I mean, that even with that exciting opening at the very start, when Miko runs into Egg, that you think, oh, okay, this is going to be the danger throughout, and it just gets worse and worse, as you say.
And they make sure like there's definite stakes. Like Rico over the course of the story is just building up a collection of scars, and not just the obvious visible ones on her skin.
Yeah, definitely. And but it's weird because, and I just think it sounds like you've experienced. There's this weird, it's a strange, like the show. Objectively, you could criticize it, saying it doesn't need to go to these extremes. It doesn't need to
You
treat the
can
characters this
indeed.
way.
Sometimes it can just feel gratuitous.
Yeah,
Like, that is an absolute reasonable criticism.
yeah. At the same time, whilst that's probably true, it just has this strange, and not because of this, but it just has this strange, like hypnotic quality as a show, which I've never really experienced with another show. Where because you're sucked in just a combination of everything, the visuals, characters, and the
Yeah,
extreme
it's
to go
really
through.
compelling,
Yeah, and I
even
can't
as
even.
it's utterly horrific. But that's the thing, a lot of
Yeah,
good horror does that. A lot of good horror
yeah,
is compelling in that way. And to be honest, even some of the gratuitous stuff it does, I mean, when it comes to horror, like, there's a reason that it's such a popular genre among women,
yeah,
because there is a lot of a sense of relating to stuff, but at the same time, like there's a certain control when you're watching horror.
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, um, really good show. I appreciate you introducing me to it.
hmm in spite of everything they go through,
In spite of
in
everything.
spite of the trauma, of course. I'm glad. I'm really
And I'm
glad.
going to keep watching it. Season 2 introduces another character who I really liked, who I can't wait to see more of. So I really hope we can look forward to a season 3 that covers the remaining arcs of the manga that have been written so far and everything that's coming after. So thank you very much for introducing me to this.
You're welcome. Like me losing weeks of my life and risking everything to create this time travel ability has clearly been worth it. It's fantastic. I did have one further question actually. What was your reaction to the balloon montage scene? at the end of season 1.
Oh, that's one of those beautiful little montages. To ah, there's sometimes where you get this, yeah, like sometimes a show or a film will have a montage like this where you see the journey of a message they're trying to send back.
Yeah.
And there's all the tense moments where you're not sure it'll make it. And then eventually at the very end, the bit when you see it get to the surface. And that I think also helps really hook you for wanting to know what happens next. Because the whole city's
Yeah.
empty.
Yes, indeed.
The time they've been gone, it's been longer on the surface. And it's only going to keep getting longer. But we got a brief flash of the problems that were happening on the surface. And yeah, now all of their support structures back up on the surface are gone. And they can't even leave the abyss because of how deep they are now. And oh,
Yeah, I think that's a great description. And the kind of
the scene seeing the city again though, when you
yeah,
see the city at the start of it and it's all bustling and there's so much going on,
yeah,
and it's a really beautiful place, and then seeing at the end and there's just like leaves blowing through it and empty streets and absolutely haunting, and I loved every second of that montage at the end.
and I would say as well, like the music like adds a lot to that montage as well.
This show has great music.
Yeah, no, indeed. So there's a cool like the direction and the narrative choices. Like, so introducing these characters at the start, then quite quickly going in the abyss. And characters you think will be major aren't really major.
Yeah.
And then having like a seemingly random montage, but one that reminds you of this. It also reminds you of the places they've been to.
It reminds you of their whole journey down.
Yeah, and it really adds to that epic adventure scale kind of thing. It kind of reminded me of like a role playing game where you end up a million miles. It feels like a million miles away from where you started. It really feels like an adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So I'm glad you enjoyed that too. Just to offset all the trauma, that moment of beauty and intrigue, as you say as well, from a story point of view.
The show has so many moments of beauty. That's the thing about it. There is so much beauty in this show, juxtaposed with all the nightmarish horror.
Fantastic. So okay, I'm very glad I recommended it. I'm glad you enjoyed. I'm not sure that's the right word. Enjoyed.
Experienced.
Yeah, I'm glad you experienced it.
This show.
Yeah, indeed.
I cannot recommend it to everybody. It requires certain tastes, certain constitution, but if it is your thing, very early on that it's something you probably aren't going to be able to stop watching.
Yeah, it's you will watch several episodes in a row normally. It's so addictive. Yeah. So, fantastic. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, we'll have to use the time travel ability for more good uses.
We need to use this much more.
Yes.
Very responsible use of time travel.
Okay, thank you very much, Amy. And it's a shame that, like, for everyone listening, I don't have the ability of time travel to jump from your before and after reactions, but it would still be great to hear your thoughts. If you haven't seen it, then what are you waiting for? Check it out.
Yeah, we can't jump to after all the reactions from the viewers, because then they can't. Then we'd be recording in the future from after they've reacted to the podcast we're recording now.
Oh, man, yeah, it's totally Back to the Future, right? It kind of
too paradoxical. We can't do that.
Yeah, and like honestly, I've written a lengthy backstory, which is totally scientific and true, by the way, about like how this time travel works and the limited power, and it only works in very certain circumstances that involve checking our reactions about cartoons for a few weeks at a time. It's the only way it works. Is the power.
Very.
Yeah, there's a whole like research paper on it, everything. Excellent. Thank you for listening. On that note,
Thank you, everybody.